I understand that something happened at the school. It may have been a week or two. I'm not quite sure when, but something happened at the school a while back. And something about involving the principal or being at the principal's office.
Yes.
Now, is it true that there was something happen involving the principal in the office?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Weaver said to stay in his office, and he locked the door.
Okay.
I
Well.
could even hear the keys turning.
Okay. Well, let me just ask a few questions then. So you're saying that your principal is Mr. Faber?
Mr. Baber.
Oh, Mr. Baber. Okay, that's his name. Okay. What I would like you to do is to describe to me from the beginning, like at some point you must have been in your classroom and, you know, before you went to the office. I'd like you to describe what happened to me. Pretend you're back in your classroom just before, you know, this thing at the office happened. Tell me what happened. Let me start. You were sitting in your classroom, and then what happened next?
I got my stuff ready, put it in my backpack, and went down to the office because my smaller brother's teachers said, "Come on, guys, you have to go to the office to meet your dad." So I went to the office. Mr. Weaver said, "Just sitting here. You can unzip your jacket a little bit, and you put your backpack to the side of the wall." And then he locked the door and we stayed in there about for 2 hours.
Okay, so let me just go back a bit. So one of the teachers told you to go down to the office?
Yes, Mrs. Mooney, and she walked us down.
And she walked you down. And again, just so I got it clear, what did Mrs. Mooney say that you were going down there for?
She just says that you have to go down for your dad to take you home.
Okay, so she told you your dad was going to be there to pick you up?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you got down to, where did she take you?
Right down to the office.
Now, is this the big office or the principal's office?
The principal's office.
Okay. Now, does he have his own, like I've never been in your school, so does he?
He has a door, and you go in the door and there's a small area there, and that's where he usually goes.
Okay. Is it like is this the desk that he sits at when he's?
Yes, he does his work there.
He does his work there. So it's his own, is it like a private room? There's no other people working in there at the same time?
Yeah, it's a private room.
Oh.
And he was talking to Jim Maloney about what's going to happen to us.
Oh, so when you went down to the principal's office,
We stayed there for 2 hours, and then when he came back, he phoned Jim Maloney in the Children's Aid.
okay. So I just wanted to be clarify that. So when you first went down, he wasn't talking to Jim Maloney when you went there?
No, we stayed there for about an hour, and then he phoned for a half an hour or so, I think. And then he went out, and then there was already half an hour, so then we've been there for 2 hours so far. And then, yes, and then we came out, and Mr. Baber said, it's a good idea if you went with your dad. And then, after, yeah, I think that's it.
When you first saw Mr. Baber, is it?
Yes.
Okay, when you first saw him, and he took you into his office, did he tell you why he was taking you in his office?
No, he didn't tell me.
And so
He says, are you wondering why you're in here? And I said yes, and he didn't say anything. And then we went back. Wait, he went back, then he went back in. And he said something about, I said that, why am I not with my daddy? And he says, I can't answer that right now.
So you did ask him why you weren't being allowed to see your dad, and he said that
He can't answer that
he
right
can't
now.
answer it. Okay. Now, when you're in the principal's office,
Yes.
did he stay with you, or did he
No,
leave?
he left a couple of times, about 2 times.
Okay. And when he left, did he leave for a long period of time, or?
A pretty long time, yes.
Okay. Would you say that he was in the office more of the time, or was he out of the office?
Out of the office.
More of the time, okay. And when the principal left his office, did he say anything to you?
No, he just says, yes, he did. He just said, we'll be right back. I'll be right back, guys. And then he went out.
And what did he do when he went out? Is there anything that he did when he went out the door?
Yes,
Did
he opened up the door, and and when he was out the door, he locked it.
And how did you know he was locking the door?
Because I can hear the keys turn.
Okay.
He went outside of the office a little bit times, and he locked the door.
Oh, he locked the door. And how did you know that he locked the door?
I heard the keys.
You did. Okay. And before the principal left it, did he ever tell you or your brother what, if you had to go to the bathroom, did he tell you what you could do if you had to go to the bathroom?
No.
He didn't. How long do you think that you were in the principal's office from the
About
time?
2 hours.
So you think it was a long time then, eh?
Because we were there till 3. Then it was 4:44, so pretty close for 2 hours.
And was there a clock in his office that you could see, or is there a clock?
No.
Okay.
Outside the office, there was a clock.
Oh, there was. Okay. So you saw that, did you?
Yes. We weren't there exactly that time. I came out and into my dad's Jeep, and then I saw it. It was 4:44.
Okay. While you're in the principal's office, or before the principal left the office, did he tell you guys? Now, again, I guess I forgot to ask, was your brother with you?
Yes, he was. He was right beside me.
He was right beside. So both of you went down the office.
Yes.
Before the principal left his office, did he talk to you guys or tell you what to do if you had to go to the bathroom?
No. He just went straight out and said, "I'll be right back, guys."
And did he come right back?
No.
Okay. Now, while you're in the office, did you...
Yes, he gave us a piece of paper and pens for we can draw.
Okay. Now, while you and your brother were in the office, did either one of you guys have to go to the bathroom?
I don't think so. Maybe my brother a little bit, because sometimes he had to go to the washroom. I'm not sure. He never told me.
Okay. Now, what did your while you and your brother were in the office? How did this make you feel?
Very, very bad, because I couldn't see my dad for about 2 hours, and I never didn't see my dad for 2 hours if I was without my mom or my dad.
Now, do you think that being locked in the principal's office, do you think that that was right, or do you think
Very wrong, because I couldn't go anywhere, unless if I can just walk around the room. That would be it.
Now, at any point while you were in the office, did you or your brother want to leave?
We both wanted to leave really, really bad.
And at any time, did you or your brother try to leave? Did you go over and try to open the door?
I went to the door and tried to open it, and I couldn't open it. It was locked.
It was locked, was it?
Yes.
After this incident, do you feel that you can trust your principal?
I can never trust him again.
So do you think Mr. Baber should have done that, or he should have not have done that?
He should have not done that. I think that's illegal.
Okay. What makes you think that it's illegal?
I don't think it's right to lock someone in a room.
How do you think your brother felt when he was in there? Did he tell you how he
He
felt?
wasn't so upset, but I was crying.
Well, you were crying.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was more upset than him. Because my dad said probably because he didn't understand
Okay.
what was happening.
Now, were you crying when you were... Where were you crying?
I was in the office crying, then when I went on the bench, I was still crying.
Oh, were you? Okay. Did Mr. Baber see you when you were crying?
Yeah.
And what did he say anything to you when he saw you crying?
No. Yes, and he said, "What's the matter?" I said, "I want my daddy," and he said, "He'll be back soon."
And that's all he said.
Yes, that's all that he said.
Did Mr. Baber ever say anything to you after that? Like, that happened, what, a couple weeks ago?
No.
When did that happen? Was it a couple weeks ago?
I think it was 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Maybe 3.
Did Mr. Baber ever say anything after that to you?
No.
Did Mr. Baber ever apologize to you for what he did that day?
He didn't apologize, but he said, "I'm sorry that I wasn't in here so quick."
Okay, so he apologized for taking a long time.
Yes.
Did Mr. Baber ever tell you why he did what he did that day?
No.
He never did tell you.
I did ask him, "Why am I not with my daddy?" And he says, "I can't answer that right now."
Okay.
I went to pick up my children, Stephen and Ryan, as I always do, and I was in utter shock as the children were nowhere to be seen. I looked everywhere in the schoolyard, in the play area, and even at the door, and I couldn't find them anywhere. Feeling a sense of anxiety, I immediately rushed to the offices where I saw the principal and asked him where the children were. I didn't see them in the front office area either, so I was very concerned about their whereabouts. The principal looked at me after ignoring me for quite a while, and he indicated to me, just simply said to me, after I asked him where the kids were, he said, the children are with me. They're with me is actually exactly what he said. And so then I asked him again, well, what does that mean? And he looked at me again, he said, they're with me. And I said, by what authority, by whose instructions, whose order? And he said, just give me a minute, wait right here. And he went over to his office and came back with a note which had a name on it that I recognized from the Children's Aid Society. He told me that I needed to phone them. I again asked him by what authority he was acting on, and he was very nebulous, unclear, wouldn't explain anything. So I told him very cordially that I'll be back. I immediately got into my car and drove over to the police station to seek their assistance and their help. I went into the police station and I explained to them what had happened. I showed them my court order that I had custodial rights to the children on this particular time. And the police even declined to offer any kind of help other than offering to call the Children's Aid Society to assist in defusing this particular incident. And that is what we did. We called Children's Aid, and after some discussions, the Children's Aid forced me as a condition of possibly letting the children back into my custody to go and see them and enter into an agreement with certain conditions based on some allegations that were made by my ex-wife that she had brought to the Children's Aid attention. So I ended up having to go to the offices of Children's Aid, met with the various workers who had prepared an agreement that I had to sign in order for them to release the children into my care. This has now been about an hour, at least an hour, that the children were detained or held at the school. I really wasn't sure how or where, but the principal evidently had care of my children. So eventually I signed the agreement reluctantly, and I went back to the school, at which time the kids were now sitting in the front office area where they normally would sit if they ever had to be at the office waiting for me. They were clearly distressed. They were very, very happy and anxious to see me. They hugged me right away, and as quickly as I could, I just left with them, and we started to go home. The whole incident was extremely traumatizing, not only for myself but for the kids, and it was just utterly unbelievable. When I saw Ryan, I had realized that his pants were soaking wet, and I really didn't even care to even ask him what happened right at the moment. But when we got home, I had to change his pants, and he had clearly urinated in his pants and defecated as well. Just made me utterly disgusted that a school would allow such a thing to occur to children that they're supposed to give proper care and attention to.
Now, did the principal say anything to you when he released the kids to you?
The principal made no real remarks of any kind, negative or positive. I felt very let down, and I felt that the principal was very cruel and cold about the whole incident. I'm not sure if he really understood the fact that here is a parent, a father, who was separated from his children, and he wasn't even given I was not even given a single explanation as to where they were, why they were being held, what's going on. I was completely in the dark. Absolutely nobody called me from the school, from Children's Aid, not from anywhere, that there would be any kind of problem. And so when I showed up at the school to get the children, it was a complete shock, a very deep shock that I can't efface from my memory. The sheer tingling in my arms and the elevated respiratory and heartbeat. It's something I don't think that I will ever be able to forget. When I went to the police station, I showed them a copy of my court order, and they explained to me that unfortunately they would not be able to help me to uphold or to exercise that court order. And so essentially they told me there was nothing that they could do, even though I did explain to them that the children were being held at the school by the principal against, or in violation, if I can say that, in violation of the court order that I had in my favor, which clearly showed that I had care of the children throughout the week, and especially on that particular day. The police absolutely had no concerns of any kind, and were basically just calm and impartial about the whole matter, and they just didn't offer any assistance of any kind. As a matter of fact, what I did probably the next day after this incident, I was very anxious to find out what protocols and what rules and regulations or what acts would perhaps contain the direction that the principal told me he was following. And so I did a lot of research. I read the criminal code, where, for example, I found that essentially the principal assaulted the children by forcefully confining them in his room. In addition to that, I also found that he violated other parts of the criminal code. Essentially, he kidnapped the children. He unlawfully detained them, which is just against the Criminal Code of Canada. In addition to that, there's provisions in the Child and Family Services Act which forbids anyone to lock up the children under lock and key, as my children were. Further to that, there's a section in the Canadian Charter of Rights which also forbids anybody from being held against their will by a citizen or even by anyone. It doesn't specify who. People are just simply not allowed to be held against their will unless they are arrested, and my children were not arrested. However, I also found out that by detaining the children, the principal effectively had made a citizen's arrest. And if that is what his intent was, by law, he needed to inform the police forthwith, that is, right away, that he had done so to hand over custody to the police. He had no authority whatsoever to detain the children based on anybody, even the workers at Children's Aid, telling him to do so. A police officer couldn't have instructed him to do that legally. The principal had mentioned on more than one occasion on this day as well that he was strictly following the direction, and the order is actually how he said it. He had been ordered by the Children's Aid to do what he was doing. The principal was telling me that because of the Privacy Act that he was under, he was unable to tell me anything. Absolutely couldn't explain to me a thing of what was going on. He couldn't tell me a single thing. And it's just, to this day, it amazes me how a principal has, or thought that he was able to simply detain children just because somebody told him to. As a matter of fact, the principal some days prior looked at my court order, and he clearly understood that I had a court order which showed that I had primary care of my children, and he was in agreement to that some days earlier. But as soon as Children's Aid picked up the telephone and called him to hold the children, he changed his tune, and he decided that he would follow the instructions of the Children's Aid worker rather than following what he saw in the court order. The agreement that the Children's Aid Society forced me to sign, against my will, I really did not want to sign it. But it was a condition that I would sign that document, otherwise they threatened to take the children away and potentially place them into foster care if I didn't cooperate. Within that agreement, it stipulated that I would not be allowed to live in my home with my children. In addition to that, it stipulated that I would not allow the children to be near my mother, and also that I would not go near my parents' home. And I really couldn't understand why they would force me to sign such an agreement, given that they had no evidence to show that any of these conditions or problems or concerns existed. It was merely on hearsay. I think that Children's Aid was motivated by a call that I believe my ex-wife made to them. On that same week, the week of actually on December the 1st, my ex-wife had called me, and she was extremely belligerent on the telephone. There was some matter of concern to her about equalization, and it wasn't that the next day I dropped the children off to visit with Mom, and she failed to return them. At that time, she had explained to me that Children's Aid Society had directed her not to allow the children to go with me. She said that Children's Aid directed her that the children would have to be with her until further notice. It was a day after that that I called Children's Aid to ascertain if that in fact was what they had instructed her to do, and they recanted and said that that was not the case. So clearly this whole matter was driven by a simple phone call that my ex-wife, the mother of Stephen and Ryan, it was a simple phone call that was made by the ex-wife, which instigated this whole situation. I'm not sure what would have motivated precisely the Children's Aid Society to take this action, but I do, excuse me, but I do recall that they wanted me to give up custody of my children and place custody into Mom's hands. The Children's Aid Society, I believe, was being abused by Mom, by my ex-wife, because this is not the first time that she had attempted to draw in the Children's Aid Society to leverage a CAS so that she would have a better position in court in custody issues. And astonishingly, every time that she had made that call, the Children's Aid Society would be there immediately and would even issue a letter in one case in her favor, absolutely ignoring the fact that I had been, for over a period of a year or more, been bringing serious issues to the attention of Children's Aid, which showed that Mom was placing the kids in harm's way. And they would ignore that, and with for some odd reason, I'm not entirely sure why, would always make it that Mom was just an angel who was doing a perfect job, and there was no issues with her. The children have disclosed to me over and over again how horrible of an experience it was for them. The incident where the principal had locked them, into the office. The eldest son was crying, and he was asking for me. They would not get his dad. They would not explain to him what happened. And he has a very, very deep anxiety about the whole situation. He explained to me, as did both the boys, that they know it was Mom that caused this whole problem, because they were there on a Tuesday night where they weren't told the truth as to why they were not allowed to return to their dad. In fact, the eldest boy cried right through the night because he wasn't able to go home to be with his father as he was supposed to be on that particular Tuesday night. The children at this time absolutely do not trust the principal. They don't even feel that they can take any kind of direction from him because they simply don't respect him. My eldest son explained to me, he said, "Dad, how can I trust this man when he lied to me? Dad, you taught me never to lie, and yet this principal at my school lied to me when he said that he didn't lock me into that room, and he did." And so they don't trust the principal at all. They've asked me over and over again to take them out of that school. In fact, there have been days where they outright didn't want to go to school, specifically in fear of what could happen the next day. They feel that another day, they might be taken away from me again. And as it happened recently, there was an incident where an older child possibly bullied my youngest son, and what that needed was for him to see the principal. And his teacher explained to me, she saw that he was very, very discontent and very anxious about having to see the principal. He did not want to go see the principal at all, fearful of what might happen. He's just utterly afraid of him. In my view, the Children's Aid Society had absolutely no business to have phoned the school and implicated the principal or any other staff member to hold the children without due process. There is a provision in the Child and Family Services Act where if they felt that the children were honestly in danger of some kind, they could have filed a motion in court for protection of the children. But they didn't do that. In fact, they could have gone and taken custody of the children. They didn't do that either. They simply instructed a complete stranger, in a sense, really, someone who's not even authorized to detain children, to hold the kids. And they had no authority to do that whatsoever. I think what we need to do is to bring attention to our members of Parliament to ensure that we properly apply laws as they were written to be interpreted and to be followed. I believe the Children's Aid Society is completely off the rails. I think they feel that they can do whatever they want. They can simply pick up the phone and instruct a principal to hold children. And the principal was fearful of a $10,000 fine if he did not follow the explicit instruction of the children's aid worker, which is just simply unacceptable. In essence, the Children's Aid Society had instructed him to violate the criminal code, and the principal willingly did that without any consideration to the seriousness, to the serious gravity of what he is doing by violating the rights of my children and myself, the father. So this happening on December the 4th, it just simply amazed me that I going to pick up the kids on December the 8th on Monday. Again, I go to get the kids, and the kids are nowhere to be seen at the regular door. This time I walked straight to the classroom to see if they were there, perhaps. On this occasion, my sense of anxiety was even further heightened, much higher than on December the 4th, as I just didn't know what was going to be happening this time. And the youngest, or one of the teachers, she knew what was going on, only to the point that the kids were again called to the office. And she helped me. She was very, very helpful. She told me that everything was okay. The kids are here. They're at the office. And once again, I had to phone and speak with the Children's Aid Society worker as a condition before they would allow the children to be released to me. So again, the children were held against their will, against my will, simply by a Children's Aid worker picking up the telephone and calling the school and instructing them to hold the kids.
Injustice can always live and always survive when it is in darkness and when it is shielded from oversight and accountability. Injustice cannot live in any other environment. And the CAS is in that darkness. What it does and how it does it is unseen by everybody except those who are affected. Now, that's not to say that everything that the CAS does is bad. Absolutely not. But what it, on many times, and you people are here as a testament to it, they can act unjustly. They do take children who ought not to be taken. They do things that they ought not to be doing. And nobody other than those who feel the injustice directly know about it.
So I understand that you've had experience with the Children's Aid Society coming to your school one time. Can you tell me about how you feel about Children's Aid workers coming to your school?
It's really embarrassing. I don't think they should do that because then you get called down to the office, and then when you go back, like after you're done talking to the worker, then students are asking you questions about why you got called down and what's going on. And then even the secretaries and the principals, once they find out that a CIS worker has been there to talk to you, you get treated differently because automatically it's always something about at home. People with authority never think that the CIS is wrong.
How did it make you feel when the Children's Aid Society workers actually came to your school and spoke to you at the school?
It was embarrassing because, like, I had to, like, they called it over, like, the PA thing in our room, and they asked me to come down. So, like, all the class was, like, looking at me. So I went down, and it took about, like, 10 minutes, and then when I got back up, like, a bunch of teachers knew, and the secretary and the principal, and then when I went back up to classroom, like, this one girl sitting beside me was like, "Oh, what happened? What happened? Like, is there anything wrong or anything?" And it was, like, really embarrassing because I didn't know what to tell her. So I just told her that, like, there was something, like, it was never, nothing. Like, so I had to, like, come up with something.
So if for some reason the Children's Aid Society workers did want to speak to you, if they had a concern, what do you think would be a better way of speaking to you? Where do you think that they should speak to you, or what do you think they should do if you find it's embarrassing at the school? What would you suggest?
Like, at home, or, like, in a place where, like, nobody goes, so, like, then it won't be, like, embarrassing, and a place where you know that you're safe, and it's just embarrassing.
Would you find it okay if you went to the Children's Aid Society's offices? Would that be okay if they wanted to talk to you?
Well, technically I wouldn't like to go at all, but it's better than going at school and being embarrassed.
Did at any point anyone, either from the Children's Aid or from the school, did anyone ever indicate that you would suffer any kind of punishment or consequences if you didn't cooperate or talk with them?
Yes, the CAS worker would say, she said to me that if I wouldn't actually interview them, if I wasn't talking with them, they would take me out of the school, suspend me, or expel me from there, and take me into their custody. The most embarrassing experience that I had, made me cry at the moment, is when they announced for a CAS worker to come meet with me, and I lost a lot of friends. I lost good friendship with actually teachers, and they didn't trust me anymore. A lot of my friends didn't trust me, didn't talk to me at all. I felt really bad. I was crying. I was really sad. I didn't want to go to that school anymore. It was just a really bad experience. So what I think is for CAS people not to be into schools. If they were to be interviewing kids, it would be with their parents under supervision and people that they can trust, and not to put leading questions into kids' mouth and not try to force them to do things they don't want to do. That's what I think.
During your experience with dealing with Children's Aid Society at your school, do you think that did this result in you actually being afraid to go to school sometimes, or did this not affect your thoughts about going to school?
It affected my thoughts very much. Every morning I'd wake up hoping CES would not come and talk with me. It was very embarrassing. I felt like I didn't want to go to that school anymore. I wanted to move out. I wanted to move out of Toronto and move back with my dad, which I did, and I'm very glad I did with that.
I know there quite a number of times I come to school because I used to bring my kids, I prefer to give children hot food, so I used to bring them food, and when I don't see them in classes I was looking for them, and quite a number of times I just come and I see they are questioned by some social workers and teachers. And sometimes when I come, they just stop talking and looking at me, and children kind of getting like, everyone like getting shocked and scared. And I ask, "Hi, I just brought food. What's the problem here?" Then when I come back, when children come back home, they're asking now so many questions. They keep on questioning us.
Now, is this the women at the women's shelter or the social workers?
It was a women's shelter. Social workers, they were going, when children going to school, they used to remove them from classes and keep on questioning, what about, I wasn't being given как permission to be present. They are told we are questioning and counseling children individually. You're not supposed to come. Many times my kids been called aside at school because in a room, David's room, if they take my kids, I ask why. But when I go sometimes by chance in school, so many times I found my kids in a separate room sitting, and one vocal was from shelter and another vocal was from school, I remember. And the same people was keep on talking about my children, what about, I don't know. And when my children come back, they used to be very angry with me. And when I ask them what's going on, they told, oh, it's too much, I don't know. And they were very irritated and start changing their behavior towards me after these meetings. And I was asking, what is people talking to you about? Why you kind of, after this meeting doesn't help you, you're getting rude to me. What's going on?
Did the children ever say what these people were telling them?
We've been told, do not tell you.
So were they told then to keep secrets from you?
Yeah, they are told, they are told if your mom asks, don't tell her, because you have to learn in Canada, you're supposed to be confidential, your privacy is protected. So you're not supposed to tell your mom everything.
And what do you think about children being told to keep secrets from their parents? Do you think that's right?
No, I believe they were, in my language, brainwashing the kids. Because after all this meeting, my children start changing their behavior, especially Al, he start become violent in shelter.
So you were saying that you think the children actually became more violent after these meetings?
They went under influence. They were kind of, I don't know, influenced by that people. And children, and they start changing their behavior. And when I ask what's going on, they told these people that's teaching us how to be Canadian.
During your experience with Children's Aid and the schools, did you ever find that the Children's Aid Society workers disclosed information to either teachers or to the principal that may have caused the school officials to look upon you in a negative manner?
Yes, Children's Aid Society would tell the schools anything and everything that they felt would turn the schools against me. So the principals would not believe or take into effect anything that I had to say regarding my daughter, because they were convinced that I had no idea how to parent my child, or I had no idea how to be a mom. So they would constantly disclose things that had nothing to do with school, had nothing to do with my daughter's education. I always felt like Children's Aid would go in and they would make it so the schools were wrapped around them. And it didn't matter what I said, what I did. They had Children's Aid spin on everything. And I felt like everything that I suggested or everything that I said wasn't taken into consideration because of what Children's Aid said. everything has been made worse because of the Children's Aid Society, especially with the schools. She's been stereotyped. They treat her differently. I don't trust the schools here. If I were to stay in Canada, I would never in a million years enroll my daughter into a school here. Never. Or another child. No way. I don't trust them. When I signed the papers giving them certain powers over my daughter because they do have care of her for 8 hours a day, I did not authorize them to allow Children's Aid to come in to interview her without any adult there. There's a lot of things I did not authorize them to do, yet they just went and acted on their own. And what's really frustrating is if my daughter had fallen and broken her leg, they would have needed to contact me. But if the Children's Aid Society wants to come in to interview her, nobody contacts me. I don't trust them to act in her best interest. I do not trust those people at all anymore. Not at all.